Well, hello there, gunfighters, and welcome to Gunfighter Life. Saddle up for another episode where we talk about guns, gear, ammo, gunfighting, the right way, with God at the center, Judeo Christian values, and real world first hand experience. If you listen for any length of time, if this is not your first rodeo here, then I like to do a tactical verse of the day, usually at the end, but I'm going to mix it up a bit. Why? Because I was just in my Bible and I've read this and I thought it would be nice to share. To the eternal King, immortal and invisible, the only God, to him be honor and glory forever and ever. Amen. Also, let those words be your weapons as you fight the good fight. And keep your faith and clear conscience. You'll find those passages in 1 Timothy. With that, what are we going to talk about today? Well, you probably know because you probably clicked on this episode. But in case it was just playing randomly, we're going to talk about home defense handguns. Yes, home defense handguns. So get excited. I think this is a topic that will do well. Many people I think are interested in this, and I'm here to serve you guys. So this is how I'm going to serve you today. Talking about home defense handguns. I am going to put in a short version of the bio. You can skip by hitting the fast forward button on most apps if you want to fast forward through it. But I like to establish some bona fides of all that God has allowed me to do in life, because I could do nothing apart from Him. For it is written, without me you can do nothing. Apart from God, I can't do anything. All the things that He's allowed me and blessed me in life with, all the talents and skills and abilities, and saving me from many things, including myself. So I'm going to put in the bio, as I've been a professional gunfighter most of my adult life, to establish some street cred for this episode, and then we'll get into it. Bio. First and foremost, I am a Christian. That is number one in my life, serving God, following Jesus. Combat veteran, served in the United States Marine Corps and the Army. Also law enforcement veteran, private contractor, state rifle and pistol champion. Professional big game hunter and guide. If you feel called to support, check out Patreon. There should be a link in the show notes. With that, I am your host, Michael Milito, and I am blessed to serve you today. Alrighty there, gunfighters. Home defense handguns. Now, it should be obvious that the handgun you have and use for home defense is better than the handgun that you don't have and train with and use for home defense. So if the one handgun that you have is a Smith & Wesson J-frame, then okay, that's your home defense handgun. I would not call that an optimal home defense handgun. I'm going to get into what I would consider optimal home defense handguns. Well, let's start with Glock, because Glocks are such a big part of the market. And a lot of people are dyed in the wool, drank the Kool-Aid Glock. It's got to be Glock perfection. If it's not Tenefer coated and doesn't have the ergonomics of a 2x4, it's not a real handgun. So a lot of people are Glock people, and a Glock is a serviceable handgun. And there are many Glocks. Many would be okay for this. Many would be poor choices for this. Again, if a Glock 42 is what you have, fine. If that's the one handgun that you have for right now, then that is your home defense handgun. However, that's not the best choice. Full size. I don't care how much you trick out your Glock 43 with compensators and stippling and whatever, it's still not going to drive like a full size Glock. So, home defense handgun and the Glock world, 17 and up. For this, I'm going to recommend the 17 as a minimum and a 34 as a better choice. If you can get a 17L, they're not the most common, so that's kind of a caveat, but the 34 is just about as good and much more common. The 34, if you don't know, is the long slide. It's like the Pinocchio version of the Glock 17. It just has a longer barrel, longer slide. Why might you want that? Well, because you're not concealing the gun. Plus, the extra weight out front makes it more controllable. That's a big reason they're popular in competition shooting. And you might not think there's a lot of parallel between competition shooting and home defense, but I will differ from that and say that I think there's a lot of crossover, because you're dealing with big handguns, because again, you don't have to conceal it. If you're going to use a handgun for home defense, why not go big? A bigger handgun for the same given caliber. In general, there's vast generalities, but in general is going to handle better, shoot better, have more capacity, easier to control recoil, etc. So yeah, I would go with a Glock 34 for this. Glock 17 is okay, Glock 34 better. Gives you plenty of room to mount a light, and I would mount a light on a home defense handgun if possible. I would also have access to a handheld light, because I don't just want a weapon mounted handgun light, but I would have a handgun light mounted on a home defense handgun. If you're going with Glock, there's nothing wrong with the Glock handgun light. If you don't know, Glock also makes a handgun light. It's rather ugly, but if you're a Glock person, you're probably not into aesthetics on handguns very much. And they work just fine, and they're not that expensive. So the Glock 34, the Glock light, there you go. And again, the 17L is a little bit rarer, but if you are a connoisseur of the older Gen 3s and you want a 17L, I would say that's fantastic as well. Now next, if you're not a Glock person, before I get off the Glock train here, if you have really big hands, like bigger than the average man hands, and you can drive it well, yeah, I've said this before, I think they're too big for the average shooter, including myself. I carried one on duty, and when I started to become a better shooter, I realized the gun was just too big for me to shoot as effectively as I could shoot a normal size gun. But a double stack 45, such as a Glock 21, if you can not just shoot it, I mean, just about anybody, a 10-year-old girl can shoot it, but shoot it well and have it properly fit your hand. If that's you and you can do that, then a Glock 21 would not be a bad choice either, with all the accessories heretofore mentioned. Now, if you're not the Glock dyed-in-the-wool person, you might look at the SIG 320 series. It took me a long time to warm up to this platform, but it is a good platform. It has the advantage of modularity, the advantage of right out of the box, in almost any opinion, unless you're just a diehard Glock shooter, better ergonomics, a better trigger, as good a quality in my opinion. It is a slightly more complex design, but we're talking CONUS home defense. We're not talking throwing it in a porta potty or, the moon dust of Iraq. We're talking about next to your bed. And the one that I'm going to recommend is still military proven. The M17. It's one of my common carry guns. I generally carry a full-size fighting handgun. Many people don't. But it would be a good choice for a home defense handgun. Again, military proven. It's optics ready if you want to go that route. Also, it comes with a standard capacity, 17 round magazine. I've got it. So, yeah, 17 and then 21. Comes with a 21 round magazine as well. And again, for home defense, if you decide you want a 21 round magazine, it's not really going to hinder anything because, again, you're not concealing it. That would be a good choice. The only deal breaker is I actually kind of prefer a thumb safety. Continuity of training, I prefer a hammer-fired gun. Single action, safety on hammerback. But continuity of training, if I'm running a striker fire, I don't mind a thumb safety. That said, if you don't want to, you can just leave the thumb safety off, because there's plenty of 320s without a thumb safety. Or you can get a similar model of the M17 without the safety at all. That doesn't even exist on there. But a full size, I'm going to say M17 size or greater, full size 320. It's a phenomenal choice. And what you're getting over the Glock, in my opinion, but in many other people's opinion too, a much better trigger, better ergonomics, and you get the modularity. And if you decide you're going to mount optics, I know that Glock does offer an optics mounting system, but in my opinion, it's kind of an afterthought. Not all optics mounting systems are created equal, and in my experience, I much prefer the SIG 320 mounting system, the M17 mounting system, over a Glock mounting system. So you have that there, and most of the grip modules that I'm aware of in the full size they're gonna have that bottom rail to mount aforementioned light, whatever light you want. Pelican, Streamlight, Surefire, there are many good lights. I mentioned I prefer hammer fired, and since we're on SIG, a SIG 226, that's my other and kind of my favorite carry gun, a SIG 226, the full size fighting handgun. I prefer the single action only, which is kind of rare, but that's for concealed carry. I would have no problem with the old double single SIG 226, and the good news is these can be found right now. I think they're underappreciated on the surplus market. And I'm talking law enforcement surplus. We often think of military surplus. But last time I was looking, there was quite a few deals on SIG 226s for law enforcement trade-ins. And the way most police agencies qualify, most of those guns are going to have plenty of long life in them. And some people would say, and I guess I would agree, that SIG 226 is one of the best combat handguns, period. So you could go the SIG 226 route if you prefer a metal on metal hammer fired gun. I'll probably butcher the quote from Star Wars, but a more elegant weapon from a more civilized age. If you prefer that, you want a nice smooth hammer fired trigger with a decocker, something like that, a good law enforcement trade-in SIG 226. Phenomenal choice. Now, I'm not aware of any of the trade-ins that are going to have optics ready capability, but if you don't care about that or you want to get a direct cut for an optic, there you go. Full size, military proven, and well respected fighting handgun. The next one, I think, is the best combat handgun, period. In my opinion. Many people would disagree with that, many people may agree with it. But the Beretta 92 series, and probably your most standard 92 FS or M9, it's a phenomenal fighting handgun. It's full size. It's battle proven, it's war proven. It's a good handgun. It's also a good home defense gun. The standard M9 and FS do not have a rail on the bottom, which kind of stinks for this. However, the A1, the Marine Corps version, does have a rail, and several other versions have a rail. So if you were looking for one of those with a rail, the A1 version, and many others, but that's a great full-size fighting handgun. If you want a cheaper option, again, the surplus market, these I think are really underappreciated. I've seen the M9s and 92 FS for very, very reasonable prices. I mean, really, a really good deal. I think people will look back on those prices and think, wow, that was crazy. You could get those for a fraction of a $2,000. I don't like to talk dollars with inflation the way that it is, because you might listen to this a month from now and the prices have changed. But I think really undervalued. I'm not a gun collector. If I were, I'd probably buy several of those and put them away. They're probably going to hold their value a lot better than a lot of other things. But if you want a good deal now on a good, again, battle-proven, solid home defense handgun, a full-size Beretta 92 family of whatever flavor that you want. Now, one that's oft forgotten in the handgun world, I think, is HK, unless you're like an HK aficionado. If you are, this will make you happy. But HK has many good full-size fighting handguns. The HK VP9, if you want a simple operating system, a good striker-fired polymer handgun. It's really good right out of the box. So I think home defense, I think you're going to get one, put a light on it, hopefully go train with it a little bit. But you're probably not tricking it out the way you would a competition gun or maybe even a carry gun nowadays. If you want a really good out-of-the-box polymer striker-fired handgun. And one of the downfalls of the HK is they don't have the aftermarket support as far as different accessories and stuff, but for a home defense handgun like this, I don't think you really need it. So the HK VP9 is a really, really good, probably one of the best polymer striker-fired handguns on the market. What I would go with over that is the HK P30L. The P30L is their large polymer but hammer-fired gun. And again, I prefer hammer-fired. I know that bucks the trend. But the P30L, phenomenal gun. Often forgot about because it's in this quasi-in-between world of a hammer-fired gun and a polymer gun. I think I did a whole episode on like ugly ducklings of the handgun world. Polymer but not striker-fired handguns. But that's a really, really good option. The P30L or the HK-VP9. They're good options. If you don't care so much about the modularity like the M17 320 chassis system, and you just want a really good polymer striker fired handgun, full size, put a light on it, yeah, that's a good choice to VP9. You might think I'm going to recommend FN next, but I'm not. I'm not a big fan of the FN, modern handguns. I've been down that road and regretted it. I'm likewise not going to recommend Springfield any of their handguns. Period. I've been down that road and I've seen many people go down that road. I've recently had one of the patrons go down that road and after much frustration still can't get their handgun running. I have never seen a professional gunfighter that used a Springfield handgun for duty where it actually worked. Either the 1911s or their XDs. Maybe their Echelon will be okay. You know my general rule on that. Give it 3 years to make sure it's proven and maybe it'll be okay. But I have yet to see a professional gunfighter run a Springfield handgun on duty, in a duty role, and have it actually work. Why would I consider reliable? So I'm not going to talk about those either. I'm going to throw in a wild card here. How about the Maxim 9? Kind of often forgotten about. And I recently did a show on Banned is Not Better where I talked about the impracticalities for most situations for a suppressor. So I thought about this gun and I thought it would be good to include. I actually went back and re-recorded the section and put it in to show that there are some practical applications. The Maxim 9, if you don't know, is an integrally suppressed 9mm handgun. It's been around a while. It's been around for several years, so it meets the 3-year criteria. I have not heard of any real big issues with it. It's integrally suppressed, and it would be a intriguing home defense option because you don't get that giant long dill pickle at the end of your handgun. It's integrally suppressed, so it's designed into the handgun. So if you're worried about hearing damage and things like that, it might be a fine choice. Normally I would disregard it because it's kind of kludgy for duty use, for carry use, for a concealed carry gun or something. But that's not really as much of a concern if you're talking about home defense. So the Maxim 9 is an intriguing option. Now, not everything has to have a detachable box magazine. What about wheel guns? What about revolvers for home defense? Well, I think there are some good options. And again, you're not worried about concealing it. So if you have a J-frame, if the J-frame is the handgun that you own, then that's your home defense handgun and train with it and use it. But there's no reason to have a small ultralight concealed carry gun for you. And listen here, men, or for somebody you love, for their home defense gun. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. For any given caliber, the smaller the handgun in general, the more it's going to recoil. If you're getting a revolver for home defense, for you or somebody else, you want a big revolver in a given caliber. A full size. And since capacity is one of the things that limits the revolver, and usually you don't want to go too big because you use that big awkward cylinder, that's not really a concern for home defense. But you might look at something with a little bit more capacity. The 686 Plus give you 7 rounds, and there are some 8-shot revolvers in the common caliber of 38-357. And although they're usually pretty rotund, voluptuous, and not super practical for day-to-day carry, you may also look at a 45 ACP revolver with moon clips or a 45 auto rim. That wouldn't be a bad choice either. Because again, you're not worried about its concealability. It's a home defense revolver. So a higher capacity, capable, heavy home defense revolver, 686 Plus. Maybe you want to go like the 327 route and shove even more rounds into it. It's a fine round for this application. But a big, full-size, beefy revolver, I see no problem with that as a home defense handgun. Let's talk about 1911s. A lot of good makers of 1911s, but if I'm recommending one, Colt. Why not? A 1911 is a fine home defense handgun. Yeah, you might be limited to, with an extended magazine, because again, you're not concealed carrying it, 10 rounds. But 10 rounds of 45 in your traditional handgun, and unlike the double stack Glock 21, I think most people with average sized hands really like the ergonomics and can shoot well a 1911. So a Colt 1911, I'd probably go the railgun, the Colt 1911 railgun, because again, probably going to mount a light on it. Extended magazines of the Wilson Combat flavor. I would only recommend 2 magazine manufacturers for 1911s ever, and that would be the factory Colt ones if you're running a factory Colt, and Wilson Combat. Any other magazines, I would say don't even bother unless you're training and you want to train malfunctions. But a good 1911, there are many other good ones, but if I'm recommending one, why not go with Colt? Colt 1911 rail with a light extended magazine, beautiful choice. Now I guess we'll talk about what I would consider the epitome. Like, no, budget is not a concern. I want the best. Well, again, I said there was a lot of crossover between competition. I'm going to go with an STI. And again, I'm not going to recommend Springfield or some other manufacturers of double stack 2011s to double stack 1911s. I'm going to recommend the people that do it well. Because although this is not a competition gun or a duty gun, it is a gun if it's for home defense that you're going to want to trust your life to. Don't trust your life to things that have a bad reputation of not working right or needing a bunch of work, especially for a defensive handgun. I'm going to recommend STI. The older STIs, if you can get them on the used market, are fantastic. And the new Staccatos. But again, if budget is no concern, the new Staccatos are quite spendy. I don't own any Staccatos. I own 2 STIs, therefore I don't really see the need. Those will probably last me, God willing, the rest of my life and probably many generations' lives. They're great handguns. I bought them before the Staccato thing, and when they went to Staccato, I think the prices jumped up quite a bit. But from all accounts, the new Staccatos, and from what I've seen in handling them and things, are just as good. And I know people that I respect as professional gunfighters that run those. They're phenomenal guns. If you want the best home defense handgun, get the full-size Staccato or an older full-size STI. And those guns are so good and they handle recoil so well. Get it in whatever caliber you want. Any of them. I like 9mm, but you want to get one in, double stack 45, fantastic. If you have bigger hands and you want that same thing, a gun that's really good are the older, by older I mean like Canadian made para ordnance. Double stack like the P14 or their other versions. This getting bought out by Remington. I like Remington. I like a lot of their older stuff. I really like the Remington 870, the older ones. They've had some quality control issues. And one of the things they did when they bought Para Ordnance, I think that company kind of went downhill. And I think they even kind of got rid of it. But before they bought it, and the older Para Ordnances, they were, back when I was getting into competition shooting, they were really common. And they held up to a lot of rounds. And a lot of people ran those. If you want a double stack 1911, and you have bigger than average hands. I don't think you need them as big as a Glock 21, but you have bigger than average hands. Like you wear an extra large glove. You might consider the old Para Ordnances, but talk about like the epitome of a good home defense handgun, in my opinion. A Staccato or an STI, a double stack 1911, you get the shootability, you get the crisp trigger. They make plenty of models where you can mount a light. You get whatever capacity you want. I mean, they're common in competition, so, a 26-round magazine is not uncommon. Not that you need that many, but if you want it, rock on. Again, you're not concealing it. But let me ask you this. If money was no option, you couldn't sell it, but you were gonna be given it. For your home defense gun, put on the table a full-sized Staccato with a light. I put on the table a Glock 17L with a light. And you can't sell them, so what they cost is irrelevant. And I said, you can have either one of these for a home defense handgun. Which one would you pick? Right, I think most of us would pick, unless you're again just drank the Kool-Aid of Glock, most of us would pick the Staccato. Is the better handgun for home defense. So if money is not an object and you just want the best, I think it's one of the best handguns that exists, period. I have run the STIs professionally as a professional gunfighter for many applications. I think they are the best. Maybe not every, but for many, they're phenomenal. So if you're asking me for like the epitome of home defense handgun, an STI or Staccato 2011, extended mag, because why not, and a light, Yeah, that's probably the epitome of it. I'll touch briefly on ammo, but good, street proven, with street cred, defensive ammunition that is paired with good practice ammunition so that you can train and have your duty ammunition, your home defense ammunition, shoot to the same point of aim, point of impact. A good street proven round, like the Speer Gold Dot 115 paired with a Speer Lawman 115, or Speer Lawman 147 matched with Speer Gold Dot 147. And that's just one example. There are many. You could do your own research and find if you want to go the 124 grain route and you want to go like use a NATO load, which are fairly hot, and you find a plus P 124 grain loading in a defensive load, like a Winchester Ranger. Right, so you do your research, but that's my criteria. Good street proven round, Speer Gold Dot, Winchester Ranger, Ranger T, Remington Golden Saber bonded or black belt, something like that. Something that's got a good street proven record, not the new next whiz bang zombie death ray Tyrannosaurus Slayer round that just came out that's supposed to be a game changer, but a good street proven round that shoots point of aim, point of impact when fired by you in your gun and is reliable when fired out of your gun by you. And I normally don't recommend plus P, but I have no problem with a plus P round in a home defense handgun because you should be dealing with a full size handgun. Something like an STI, with plus Ps, it's still going to be super mild. So it's one of the few times that I would recommend, more so than like a carry gun, plus P ammunition. Mostly I'd recommend it in 124 grain because unlike many other grains, you can get affordable practice ammo in that grain because you can probably find NATO ammo that's not overly expensive. So that's my thoughts on ammo, and let me close with this. I didn't want to open with it because I know many people are going to get home defense handguns anyway. In my opinion, they're some of the worst choices for home defense. The reason we carry handguns on us is because we can't logistically or legally carry long guns on us. But for almost any gunfighting application, I said almost any, you can dream up, or there are some scenarios, if I'm crawling through a tunnel in Vietnam, where I might not want a long gun. But for most scenarios, with my training and experience, he said, hey, you got to get into a gunfight today. It's going to be other people's lives depending on you. Right? I'm going to want a long gun. I'm going to want a shotgun or maybe a rifle depending on the mission. I would like a handgun as a backup. But again, as a backup. Almost no scenario where you could say you're going to get into a gunfight and I'm going to say, oh, give me the handgun. That's all that I want. I don't want a long gun. Home defense is no different. I don't know why so many people want to choose a handgun for home defense. They do have some advantages, but they don't outweigh, in my opinion, the disadvantages. So if you're looking for a gun for home defense, for a fraction of the cost of basically any of the guns we talked about here, you could get a good pump action 12 or 20 gauge shotgun. I recommend number 4 buck. Number 4 buck is one of my go-to loads for big game hunting, for defense, and for home defense. Number 4 buck. Or similar, you could go number 1 buck. Double aught buck is fine. It's the standard. But if you're looking for a home defense gun, I would really urge you to look at a shotgun first. And if you want a carbine, I'd still say that's better than a handgun. That's a whole nother episode if you want to talk about kitting out your AR for home defense or your shotgun for home defense. But I would recommend either one of those for home defense over a handgun. They're more powerful, they're easier to shoot, they're easier to train on, they're much more effective round per round. There's just a lot of benefits to a long gun. But still, I know many people like the handgun for home defense, and if you do, I'm here to serve you. I'm not here to make everybody think the way that I think. You'll probably disagree with me on many points, and that's fine. I'm not perfect. And hopefully if you're listening and you've been listening for some time, you're going to disagree with me on some things. That's good and healthy. In my opinion, if you're going to have a home defense gun, have a long gun. And if you want a handgun as a backup, then there you go. Go down this road with me real quick. Let's do a little daydream experiment here. Home defense, right? You're laying in bed. It's the wee hours of the morning. Something has startled you from your sleep. You look over, aside from God, Jesus Christ, the thing you love most in this world, your wife, is laying next to you, depending on you to keep her safe. You hear a rattling around outside, and you're not really sure what it is, so you get up and you go to your front door. That's where you hear the sound coming from. You see shadows moving in and out of your exterior light. Then you have, and picture this whether you do or not, I'm trying to paint a picture here to make a point. But you're watching your front door. You have a small window next to your front door. You see a gloved hand smash that small window and then slow and methodically reach in. Not panicking, not like they're drunk, but slow and methodically, as quietly as they can, slowly start to unlock that door and turn that knob. So you're pretty sure it's not a kid with the wrong house. Pretty sure it's not some drunk guy. It's a gloved hand methodically trying to open your front door. I can put in your hand that full-size handgun with a light, or let's just say a Mossberg 590 loaded with buckshot. In that home defense scenario, which gun would you rather have? Just a thought. Answer it for yourself. Anyway, with that, the tactical tip of the day. Now, this tactical tip is going to have nothing to do with firearms at all, but hopefully may apply to you for preparedness or whatever. And what made me think about it, being honest with you guys, our last move, if you don't know, my wife and I live as neo-nomads, sojourners on this earth. In our recent move, microphone cable got smashed. And yesterday, I went to the nearest town with a Walmart, which was a multi-hour endeavor. Well, I got there and realized that I had forgotten my wallet at home. Yeah, we've probably all been there. Thankfully, being a prepared individual, we had a backup plan. We have an entirely separate bank account that we don't really use. It's got a little bit of money in there, and we have a card for it. We almost never use it, and I wrote the PIN on the back of that card. But I didn't just write the PIN. That would kind of be silly to give somebody your card and give them the PIN. But I do a simple encryption. That's the tactical tip of the day, simple encryption. Yeah, the CIA is going to crack it, but the CIA can probably just get in your bank account. Talking for the average person that might find your card so that they can't use it. But you can use it. It's pretty easy to remember. Just pick a number, any number, share it with your wife or whomever needs the card, and you can add that number to every digit. Let's say you're going to add 3 to every digit, or subtract 3 from every digit. You can write those numbers on the back. If it's not a card that you use all the time with a common PIN, then there you go. You can also do the same thing with a bank account number, routing number. You know, obviously if you go above 10, you do the whole carry the 1 thing. But it's an easy, simple encryption. If you want to write down your bank account number, your routing number, stuff like that, but you don't want anybody else to know what it actually is, then you can do that. It's a simple encryption, adding a certain number. The other thing you can do if it's a simple PIN is just add whatever number to the front and the back. Just adding a number to the front and the back so people don't know what the actual PIN is. It's a super simple, super easy encryption. Again, it's not going to be the Enigma machine of World War II, but it's going to work for most people that just find a card. They're not going to know what the numbers are, and you can only try a PIN, I think, so many times. So that's your tactical tip of the day. Read a tactical verse in the beginning, but how about another? Because if you win a dozen gunfights and go to hell, then you didn't do it right. There are things more important. Things more important than what cool gun model or home defense handguns or even surviving a gunfight. God. God is most important. Living your life for God. Serving Him in your life. That's important. One day, you'll come to an end of your days, an end of days, and every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess. You should be ready and be prepared. This verse comes at the end of where Jesus is talking about great tribulation that will come. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. We serve an eternal, unchangeable God. That's important. With that, thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.